Hello, and welcome to Utah Tech Leads Tech for Good initiative. Today, we are talking about prepping for Pride and what that means for our local companies. So Nikki Walker, we'll start with you. How about you go ahead and introduce yourself and where you work and what you do?
Absolutely. Hi, everybody. I'm Nikki Walker. I'm the Director of Community Engagement and Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for a little company down south called Domo, and I'm super excited to be here.
Okay, Matt, let's kick over to you.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, everybody. Hey, I'm Matt Evans. I work for SalesForce. My day job is I help our top 200 customers be successful with Salesforce products and services. And my side job is I'm a vice president of a global equality group or employee resource group at Salesforce called FaithForce. I live in Spanish Fork with my family. I'm a remote worker. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. And Stacey, last but not least.
Hi, my name is Stacey Harkey. I'm a diversity and inclusion trainer with Equality Utah. Also, I own a media company called JK Studios, and I'm known for a little bit of sketch comedy on shows like JK Studios or Studio C in the area. So that's kind of what I'm here for, just to crack jokes.
Just little skits, no big deal.
Funny thing to break the ice when we start talking about diversity.
Exactly. Can we all lean towards one side of our screen and say, Saturday night? Yeah. Okay, so let's just dive in. So Nikki, tell me a little bit about why it's so important for Domo to be celebrating Pride.
Oh, absolutely. I think one of the things that I love so much about Domo is that it is really built on this idea of inclusivity and really giving people a platform on which to showcase their authentic selves. It's what helps us build the best product. It's what helps us bridge gaps between our company and our customers. And so celebrating Pride really just celebrates some of the diversity that is within our company. And that's really important that we show everyone that we are literally in love with Domo sapiens and we are in love with who we are. And so we want to share that with the world. Don't laugh at Domo sapiens. I see you laughing, Stacey.
I'm about to look it up on Google. I'm like, Domo sapiens, I missed that in school.
Look it up. It's a real thing. And so for us, community is important. And the LGBTQ plus community is a really big part of where we live and work. And so we are honored really to be able to have the opportunity to sort of reach out our hand and say, hey, we're here for you.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So Matt, you work specifically with your resource group that's targeted at faith, but how do you balance faith and the LGBT community within FaithForce? Stacey, I want you to talk about this a little bit too, because I know that you're a gay Christian, which is always interesting to me. But so Matt, kind of how does that work within your organization?
Yeah, good question. So FaithForce, it's the name of our equality group, but it includes every belief, worldview. We have people on our global leadership team that are atheist. In fact, our global president is a Christian and he's gay. And we have 23 hubs around the world. A hub for us is like a chapter. And one of our largest hubs is in New York City. And I was just talking to our president of our New York hub, who is or an African-American ordained deacon who's also gay. And we don't see your sexual preference as being kind of a part of your faith. We see it as being kind of how you identify. And what we try to do is we try to be inclusive of all those worldviews. We have a number of equality groups at SalesForce, like FaithForce. We have OutForce for our gay and lesbian community. We have BoldForce, which is our African American community. But even others like AbilityForce for those with disabilities, or WindForce for those that are Native Americans. We have 13 different equality groups. And there's conflict at times with belief systems, even between different groups that exist. In fact, I was talking to my buddy in New York, and he said there's something that we need to address. And I said, what's that? He said, well, we have some really good relationships between FaithForce and OutForce and FaithForce and BoldForce. But there's conflict because the African American gay and lesbian community celebrates a different month in New York around Pride Month. August is their Pride Month. and they don't feel like they're included as much in kind of the outforce community, which I wasn't aware of. And he said, if you look at kind of our demographics, we need to make sure there's representation of all folks, and inclusivity for all. And so FaithForce is kind of that a melting pot, I guess, for all beliefs, where we have people that show up who either have a religious background and that's how they identify, or they have just a worldview and that's how they identify. And what we try to do is in every one of our hubs, and globally, we have one of our 4 main strategies for the year. One of those is called allyship. And what that means is that whatever events that we do, we try to include another equality group or employee resource group in that event. And so it's not just a FaithForce event, but it's a FaithForce and Outforce event. And we're going to do this together. It's our FaithForce and BoldForce event. And we try to create a space where people can speak up openly and honestly, even if there is conflict, in a space where we can respect each other. It works really well when we're in environments like this where we're on the phone. We're trying to get it to work better when you're not on the phone and you're in Slack and people are making comments there. People feel like it's more anonymous there. And we're trying to kind of bring that inclusivity there. So what we try to do at FaithForce is make that a core tenet of who we are, is that we represent people who identify as people of a belief or faith or worldview, but we do that with each other. And our theme for this year for FaithForce is light each other's journey. And that doesn't mean everyone's on the same journey, but we're going to provide light so people can go on their journey. And that could be a journey of faith. That could be a journey of coming out. We have people of the pagan faith that are coming out of the broom closet, they call it, because paganism is something that people feel like they get discriminated on. And we're having them talk to others in our gay and lesbian community about what that means to come out and how to feel inclusive. So we're still trying to figure it out, but I feel like we've made a lot of strides, and at least our employees know that there's an open space where we can talk about this and you won't feel judged or discriminated against.
And it's definitely that relationship factor. I think the more people know each other, the less likely they are to say something rude, even if it's on Slack or through some sort of messaging app or anything. They're a lot less likely to say anything kind of inflammatory in those situations, as long as they know and care about or have connected with that person. So Stacey, I've watched a lot of your Instagram stories.
Oh no.
Shout out, you're hilarious, and I think that's awesome. But you talk a lot about your faith and how that fits with who you are as a person. So can you kind of speak to a little bit about what Matt was talking about? Are those 2 separate identities? Do they both feel innate? That kind of thing for anybody who might not have experienced this before.
Yeah, I think of it a lot. And I love what Matt and Nikki both talked about, because I feel like it relates so closely. I do love the term Domo sapien, and I'm going to tell you why in a second. But the concept, right, is that we have labels, and these labels can be helpful in helping us find community or identifying who we are a little bit, or even finding a term to help us just feel like we understand the world around us a little bit better. And some of my labels are I'm Black and I'm gay and I'm Christian, and those are just a snippet. But the thing is, our labels do not give us the full story, right? They're just like they're like a taste. They're a superficial dip into who we are. And when I think of like companies and stuff, your goal isn't necessarily to make a safe gay space or a safe space for Black people. It's to make a safe place for John, who is gay, or Kimberly, who is Black, right? We look at these individuals who are made of many different labels, which is cool. And we want them to feel like they can achieve their individual expression, however that is, in like a safe way. And so I love that so much, hearing about FaithForce and how it's like, it's about bringing to the table who you are and letting that be magnified. Or I love that what Nikki talks about too, where it's like at a company, your goal isn't to create a specific, culture for specific people. It's to create a culture where everyone feels accepted, everyone feels comfortable, everyone feels like a part of the Domo family, right? The Domo sapiens term. I think that's really cool, because it's like, hey, everyone's different, bring it to the table. You're cool how you are. I think that's great. And I didn't really talk about myself in Christianity, but that's kind of how I view it, is like, at the end of the day, I'm made of all these labels, and and if they ever start impeding on how I, as an individual, express myself, that's a problem with how how I'm looking at my labels. They shouldn't get in the way. These things should be empowering. And if they stop being empowering, we need to analyze how they're interacting. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. So you get shoved into corporate culture all the time because you do these specific kinds of trainings for Equality Utah.
Mhm.
Shout out to all the businesses who have their little certificate.
Yeah.
But tell us about some of the most popular misconceptions that you've experienced, whether it comes to the being gay or the community itself or the goals of the community. Like, how does that work when you're actually trying to train people who might be very ill-informed?
Honestly, it's probably less about misconceptions and more about creating an environment where it doesn't feel like like we're not antagonists. We're not it's not protagonists and antagonists, it's not enemies. It's like we're literally all just human beings. We're working for the same thing. We're working to be happy, to feel comfortable. We're at our companies trying to make money, to do fun stuff. You know what I mean? It's like we are all on the same team. And a lot of times coming into these companies, it's just giving people exposure to someone who's a little different than them and who's open and willing to talk about it. Where it's like, I'm not there to be offended. I am here to be on your team. So ask your awkward questions, ask the questions you're unsure about. And a lot of times that is enough for people just to feel a little bit more at ease and to see, oh my gosh, we have more in common than we are different. Interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. So Matt, this kind of ties back to the work that you're doing in FaithForce a little bit, but tell us, you live in Spanish Fork, so it's a relatively conservative area. And we have seen the conservative side of our country kind of swing for the fences when it comes to certain issues, specifically around the LGBTQ plus community. So how do you, with your workforce that is in Utah, how do you kind of navigate that while you're still supportive for those people who might be a member of the community, but are also still supportive of your employees regardless of their views?
Yeah, good question. Good question. I think it's important to know that, Stacey put it really well. It's important to know that we're not our identities, we're individuals. Like our identities are part of who we are. I work for a what a lot of people say is a liberal company, SalesForce out of California. They take political stances all the time. Some of them are inconsistent. And I've had conservatives in Utah come to me and say, I'll never work for that company because of some of their stances on things and some of the ways that they support. And that's discouraging for me because I don't see SalesForce taking political stances. I see them taking employee stances, helping employees of all types, and trying to be inclusive of all. And that is so important. In Utah, we do a really good job with our employees. We have about 250 employees in Utah. And we do a really good job. In fact, Utah Pride is a very big thing for our company here. It helps because our global president of Outforce is in Utah, and he's former LDS. And I've had a chance to talk to him, and I ran into him, and we had a great discussion where we were pretty open with each other. And it's very easy to look at somebody or hear something about somebody and create these assumptions. And that's what we try to do, is we try to eliminate some of those assumptions and say, go into it with an open mind. I remember being at a global event with our executive leaders and talking about some of the issues. And one of the things that I brought up is that conservatives don't really have a voice at SalesForce.
Mm-hmm.
And I got some people that looked at me kind of weird. And I said, yes, I'm from Utah. Yes, I'm a white male. And yes, I'm LDS. And guess what? I voted for Biden. Surprise. And I voted for Obama. Surprise. And I love that I did, but I'm also for guns, and I'm also against abortion. And I also think that we should have more social health care. And then the point I'm trying to make is that you can't look at somebody and say they're a Republican or they're a Democrat or they're a conservative or a liberal. Everyone's an individual, and everybody has their own history about what it means to have these certain identities. And so when you go to a group of people and you try to say, you need to be open to our gay and lesbian community, it's much more complex than that, because you're talking about somebody who grew up in a faith or a family or a demographic who has a long history, and it's more than you need to be open to this group of people, but we need to help people just be open in general and say, let's not make assumptions. Let's lead with love. Let's lead with caring, and let's have open arms. And let's identify ways that we can come together. There's a big push right now at SalesForce around the Roe versus Wade leak that happened, and there's a lot of people that are making this about an issue or one issue or another issue, but we're all trying to unify together to say we all want health care for people that is appropriate. We all want people to have human rights over their body. Let's not make this about that. Let's make it about kind of who we are as an organization, and building some of that acceptance is so critical. So with our employees in Utah, we try to be more open and accepting and of people, so it doesn't become a thing where we don't have to say, oh, well, how is Utah dealing with Utah Pride? Are they okay? No, that doesn't have to be a thing that we say, and it's not something that we say ever. But what we do say is we say, hey, let's make sure that we love everybody, we treat everybody as an employee, treat everybody as a colleague, and we can hold hands knowing that we're all going for that same mutual purpose, which Stacey put so well. How we talk about it is, can you bring your authentic self to work? And can you accept others' authentic selves? And if you can't, then this probably isn't the best place for you to work at, because that's what we believe as an organization.
Absolutely. That's a perfect pivot. So Nikki, I have a question for you. Some of the feedback that we've been getting from some of our more conservative legislators is that Utah Tech Leads has taken stances on issues that they consider traditionally social issues. I'm using air quotes. Things like housing affordability and air quality, and why we shouldn't be wasting money on stupid lawsuits, things of that nature. Domo has never shied away from making statements that can be considered political or about social issues. Why is that? And what do you think helps motivate your company to kind of take that step into the limelight and say, here no farther, or we absolutely need to be supporting these people? Like, how does that work for you?
Yeah, I mean, from my stance, and Domo's been around much longer than I've been at Domo, but from, my time there, the sentiment is that we have a platform. Domo has a platform, specifically in the region that we're in. We are looked up to as a company. I've heard it said that so goes Domo, so goes Silicon Slopes. And that's just because Domo does take that step out on faith and say, this is right. We stand for things that are right. And it's important. It's important for again, we circle back around to who we want to be to the people who work for us, right? And we want to be people, or we want to be a company that stands for something, that says, if this is important to you, it is important to us. And, lots of organizations have a platform that they can use to amplify voices that aren't heard, and they choose not to do it because they don't want the backlash. I think Domo is a strong enough company with strong enough people who make it go, who run it, right, that we can stand up for what's right and still sleep at night. And I think a lot of people are just afraid of what other people are going to say. And we just don't have that complex at Domo. We know who we are. And this goes not just for a company, but for individuals. When you know who you are, and you're confident in who you are, you are more likely to speak up for things that are right, because you don't care what people are going to say. We already know what our responses are going to be. When we stand up for the LGBTQ plus community, we mean it. And if you don't, and what you want to circle back to us is, scripture or point at other things, well, we can point right back. I mean, didn't Jesus love everybody? He didn't say, I love everybody except gay people. And frankly, whose business is it what an individual does in their own life? Those are things that affect them? Why are we concerned with what makes other people happy? We need to make sure that we are being concerned with what our children are learning and what the people who are going to eventually fill our pipeline, who those people are going to be. And we want them to know that they can come to us, their full authentic selves, and they will be embraced for their talent, for their ability, because that's what we're looking for. We're looking for talented people who are willing to share their abilities with our consumers, with our coworkers, with our communities. And so we've got to lead that charge so that everybody else feels confident and comfortable saying what's important to them. And I think that's the difference between Domo and others. We really put focus on how our culture feels to the people who work in that culture. And if we're going to say we're a culture of belonging, then we need to stand for that. And so I think that's why we don't really have trouble putting up a Black Lives Matter billboard or a We Love Everybody billboard, because we really do. We really believe Black Lives Matter. We really work with Black people every day. I'm one of them, right? We have Black people in our community. And I remember the backlash that we got from Black Lives Matter. It was disheartening, but in the same vein, where people would email and say, oh, you're supporting this Marxist organization and you don't even know who you're affiliated with. We're going, organization? We're supporting a movement that says the lives of these people matter just as much as the lives of anyone else. And if you can find fault in that, well, shame on you. What it did was open up a dialogue between us and people who may have had more conservative thoughts, or who may not have had a full understanding of what the Black Lives Matter movement was. We weren't supporting an organization, we weren't supporting a person even. We were supporting the idea that you've got to look at people holistically. And until Black Lives Matter, all lives can't matter, because we're part of all, last I checked. And so that was really important for us to say out loud and to really make a statement. And so we did. And we got something like 230 other companies in the Valley to support that. Now, what they did after, who knows? I don't know. I work for one company, not 230 of them. But it was really incredible to see in less than 48 hours, this kind of support that we got from people all across Utah saying, no, you're right. And maybe we can't put up a billboard, but we'll certainly support you doing it. And I think that kind of leadership is what's needed right now in the times that we're in. So again, proud to be a Domo sapien and to be a part of this whole movement that says community is family and family matters most.
Absolutely.
A question.
So, I 1 second and I will get right back to you. I just want to tell Nikki this because I was working at a different nonprofit organization at the time when you all did that. And we had logos coming into us, even though we were not the ones who were doing the ad or the billboard. We had logos coming into us for like weeks afterwards. Like there were still people who wanted to be a part of that. So really, that was a really interesting experience, especially in Utah. So Stacey, what'd you want to say?
I was just thinking about what Nikki was saying, and I think that's like super courageous of Domo. And I also recognize that like that's got to be kind of a tricky area to navigate, especially when it comes down to beliefs that can affect politics that feel like they are political, but also feel like human rights. It gets into this area where when we talk about right and wrong, that can mean something so different for so many different people.
Yeah.
So when we go into a lot of these trainings, we try to help people. It's not about like necessarily what's right for your life or what's wrong. It's about basic respect, right?
Yeah.
It's like you don't have to take like a belief stance and like change your whole paradigm. But what we can do is we can just extend basic respect and say, you know what, I may not understand why you feel the way you do, but I see the value in allowing you to feel the way you do, right? Or the respect that comes from allowing you to believe the way you do, just as I would want for me, kind of thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Said. And that's what it is. It's about, I just, just to circle back to that experience, my supervisor, who was the chief communications officer, and I spent a couple of weeks really having these true dialogues with people who would who would either email us to say, take it down right now, how dare you, or on the flip side, people who would say, I have 2 Black sons, we have to pass that billboard every single day. The first day they cried because they couldn't believe that a billboard would show to the world that their lives mattered. It was important. It was important. And you're right. It's not about right and it's not about wrong. It's about respect. It's about respect and love. And this is a company that leads with love. And, whether that's politically correct or not to say, it is what it is. And we showcase that.
Absolutely. So this is actually a great pivot. So we started talking about prepping for Pride and moved into Black Lives Matter. So Stacey, this is a question for you. What the hell is intersectionality, and how can people greater understand and respect what intersectionality means to different people?
Still trying to figure it out. Intersectionality is a term that was coined by Kimberly Crenshaw, and who's activist and academic, and it was originally used to describe the compounding effect of like our different identities, our different labels can have. And speaking from her experience as a Black lesbian woman, it's like being Black came with all these experiences, being a lesbian came with all the experiences. And this point where they meet is this intersection, right? And it's where you have this overlapping of experiences. Nowadays, we use the term for like, it's way more open than that. We use it for anyone and all identities. So I think about me being Black, gay, Christian, under 5'6", like whatever identity you want to say, I have a unique experience because of where these identities overlap, wherever these labels overlap. And so when it comes to recognizing the value of not just a label, but also the individual, it's to look and say, we are made of a ton of different identities. Just because Nikki and I are both Black does not mean we have the same experiences, because intersectionality. Nikki, as a Black woman, has had very different experiences than me as a Black cis man. And it's like, you know what I mean? It's like this, recognizing that can help you understand that your identity, while valuable, and your experiences, while valuable, and insights, while valuable, do not dictate the experiences of someone else. So when it comes to saying, I know what you've gone through because I've also been to this place, does not cut the mustard. My experiences as a student at BYU is not going to be the same as someone else's experience. And it's important to be able to recognize that.
Yeah, I know this is kind of weird, but for me, it feels like a lot of those labels are the building blocks, and intersectionality is kind of the glue that builds the person with all of those building blocks.
Mm-hmm.
And as a member-led tech association, I hear that there are tons and tons of companies who not only have political differences, but personal differences as well. And that comes from who the founders are and who is running the company. And that can define the company in the same way that someone's experiences can define who they are. And I think that's really, really important to remember. Yeah, so Matt, tell us a little bit about what you all have been able to do within SalesForce to create spaces where you can have these kinds of conversations, whether it's face-to-face or, COVID era. So however that works right now for you all, but like, how do you create those dialogues and those conversations between people who might not necessarily be the most voluntary participants? I'll put it that way. Oh, wait, I think you're muted. Oh, hold on.
Yeah.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah, so there's a number of things that we do to try to create those spaces. Let me touch on a couple of them. One of those is a little bit what Nikki and Stacey are doing here today, and that's being vulnerable. So if you want to create a safe space, one of the best ways to do that is to be vulnerable yourself, to make it okay to share who you are. I was vulnerable when I shared my political views. Could people have backlash against me on that? Sure they can, but that's a risk I'm willing to take because I believe in that vulnerability and inclusivity. So if somebody, especially those that are visibly different. And there's a lot of, in FaithForce, there's a lot of kind of religious folks that are visibly different, being vulnerable about that and saying, hey, you probably noticed that I'm wearing a kippah, for example. If you want to ask me about that, then you can ask me about that. So that's one thing we try to do, is to lead with that vulnerability, not try to shy away from who we are, but try to take a risk and share who we are, knowing that that might come back to harm us, but we're okay being harmed. So that's one thing we try to do. And then the other thing that we try to do is not take offense. We have some rules of engagement that we kind of try to use. Like if I want to find out about what it means to be gay, I'm not going to ask my straight friend. I'm going to ask somebody who's gay to tell me. If I want to know what it means to be Muslim, I'm not going to go to a Christian and say, hey, have you heard about the Muslims? What does that mean? One of the things is go to the source, ask the source. And that's where you're going to get an authentic response. Another rule that we have is don't compare your best to their worst. Don't try to hold one above the other, but compare your best to their best and leave room for envy. Leave room. Like, I don't wish I was 5'6" or under. Sorry, Stacey, but I do wish that I had this experience of kind of going through life like in that intersectionality that you have, because I don't know what that's like, and I want to understand it more. And I'm sure there's things about that intersectionality that I just miss, and that I could probably fall in love with, whether that's a different faith that you're talking about, or that's a different race or gender or whatever it is. Just leave room for some of that envy. We do some tactical things, like we hold some Ask Me Anything open forum sessions where people can join. We put out a topic and then people can join, and we'll do a little intro, and then there's an Ask Me Anything. And the intent of that is to say, hey, I'm here to take the hard questions. And so feel free to ask those hard questions. I'm going to lead with some of those. I was one of those for the LDS community, where I said, hey, I'm ready to take questions on polygamy, or about gays in the church and Prop 9, or I'm ready to take questions about temples, or whatever it is, like, and just having that out there. The Ask Me Anything sessions are really good to kind of create that space. The last thing I'll talk about, which has been a huge success for us, is most of the time, unfortunately, the understanding comes when there's tragedy. And we have equality circles, we call them. And these equality circles are places that anybody can come to and just share their feelings around a tragedy. Not this past weekend, but the weekend before, we had 3 tragedies that happened, didn't we? We had 10 people killed in Buffalo in our African-American community. We had 5 people killed in Dallas from our Asian community. And then we had a church that was shot up in Laguna Beach. And so we quickly rallied the troops. We got the president of our Asia Pac force, the president of Bold Force, and myself, and we led an equality circle where we had our executives come on that and kind of intro. And then we opened it up to anybody, and we said, hey, here's some guidelines. Everyone's welcome. We're not going to debate. We're going to be respectful and open. We're not going to record this. One person speaks at a time. Share stories and experiences, not gossip, and silence is okay. And we went through those rules, and then we said, now the floor is yours. And we had about 300 people that joined this call, like on a heartbeat. And somebody said, I am scared to go outside, and I live in Laguna Beach because that church is right down the street. And my grandfather is 72 years old and could have been one of those people killed. And all of a sudden, you don't hear about it, but you understand it. And then we had other African-American employees from Buffalo that are just sharing their point of view in tears about some of how they thought this would never happen here, but it's happening here. And what that allows us to do is that allows us to, one, stand against something that we can all stand against, which is hate and violence. But number 2, it allows us to understand each other a little bit more. Even though I don't know somebody who's different than me, if I can share those same feelings, then I can understand them more. I can empathize with them more. They're a human being now. They're not an identity. They're a human being. They're a brother. They're a sister. They're somebody that I'm with. We're unified because we're SalesForce, since we're all employees. So we have that unity, but we also have unity because we're all humans. We can come together with each other. So So those are some of the ways that we create space, both kind of tactically and structurally with some meetings, but also kind of emotionally with how we try to lead with vulnerability.
Absolutely.
That's beautiful. Can I just jump in really quick?
Absolutely. Yeah. Go for it.
Thank you so much for sharing. Wow, I'm super moved. But earlier, what you were saying was so important. When I want to know about something, I go to the source. And I think a lot of people miss that. But Troy Williams from Equality Utah taught me a phrase. I like little phrases. Nothing about us without us, right? And so don't have a conversation about the LGBT community without them being at the table, because then you're just talking in an echo chamber and you don't know anything because except what you think you know. And it's so much more important to know from the horse's mouth, if you will, whatever that means in the circumstance. This whole idea of bringing people together with the Buffalo tragedy is just so endearing. We had a company meeting, global company meeting that Monday following, and we acknowledged it, and it was important that we acknowledged it. But what we didn't do is take that a step further to have this open dialogue. So thank you for sharing that. It's really enlightening.
I think one of the major things that it makes me think of is the Pulse nightclub shooting in Florida a while back. I'm going to tear up, so bear with me. Was really hard. It was really hard. I didn't know anyone. I wasn't related to anyone. None of my family lived around there, but it's just one of those things to know when your community is being attacked over and over and over and over again, how hard it can be, especially as me as a cis white woman who comes across straight to most people. But listening to Governor Cox lose it, and he lost it. If you guys were there, feel free to jump in on this. But he had a moment where he opened himself up to something that he had never really opened himself up for, and exposed himself as a bully. And he was ashamed, and he was really devastated that his actions could have in any way added on to what was happening during that time period with all of the attacks on the LGBTQ community. And it's one of those things where we see, and I think all of you have spoken to this, the only way through is vulnerability. If you're not willing to be vulnerable, if you're not willing to have those conversations, if you're not willing to ask those questions, like all 400 of you who clicked, I'm watching you. 500, it was like closer to 500. Anyway, but if you're not willing to be that vulnerable, it prevents you from learning. And that's a huge, huge problem. So Nikki, your company has done a lot to support the LGBTQ community, but how have you seen other companies in the tech space kind of stepping up and doing something similar?
Yeah, fortunately, I've got lots of friends in the tech community. And so I get to sort of sit back and see what their companies are doing. And, as per usual, lots of people are involving themselves in Pride, in the parade and all the amazing activities that kind of surround June. But I've also seen them do a lot of opening up, right? Opening up the conversation, whether that's through panels or small groups or fireside chats, even bringing in organizations like Equality Utah to come and run trainings during the month of June. And, and obviously the month of June is what it is. So I'm sure Equality Utah is overwhelmed right now, y'all. But throughout the year, having Pride Month offers this opportunity to really look at your organization and see what's going on, see what you're doing, measure the success of the kinds of programming that you're having for diverse individuals. And so I think it's a great time for people to start doing trainings. that talk about intersectionality, that talk about just diversity and being open to others. Vulnerability is such a huge word right now. And I think a lot of trainers, a lot of DEI trainers are starting to lean into it. And so between, being vulnerable during this time and also being willing, right? Being intentional. So I see a lot of companies being intentional. Now, whether or not it is giving the desired effect, who knows, right? We've got to work and we've got to measure and we've got to try and we've got to ask. But a lot of companies right now are moving into action and working to make sure that their clients, customers, employees know that there's a welcoming environment. So I see a lot of activity going on. And it's really great to see. It's really amazing to watch the communities kind of come together under this rainbow banner to say we all stand together and we all support you. And it's necessary. And I saw on Twitter the other day somebody musing about why we shouldn't be so excited about Pride Month. Why are we doing so much celebration? Why are we putting a light on this? And the reality is, just like African Americans, people in the LGBTQ plus community are just getting their freedoms. And that is a real thing. That is a real thing. Individually, we can speak to, the white men who are gay, who still have that privilege of being a white male. But again, intersectionality, what else are they experiencing because they are gay? And look at, they're just getting rights to be able to marry one another. Who are we to tell people they can't marry each other? It's insane to me. So it is still, I use this chart when I'm talking about why we should celebrate Black people. And it's very similar. The amount of time that Black people have been in the United States compared to the amount of time that we've legally been free is a hot second. And so if you look at the LGBT community, who really has had the opportunity to look at the civil rights movement and use it as a template, God bless them, because nobody wants to reinvent the wheel and it doesn't have to be. But the fact of the matter is they are still fighting for rights, just like Black people are still fighting for rights, just like women are still fighting for rights. And all of these subcategories of, the American individual, right, need to be highlighted so that at some point we don't have to highlight them. We're just not there yet. We're not in a space where everybody loves each other and everybody respects each other. And until we are, we have to keep doing this work. It's hard and it's exhausting. And people who don't understand it want to give a lot of their feedback, their uneducated feedback on why it shouldn't be happening, but we've got to do this. It's our responsibility as civilized human beings to be civil to one another. And these are the things that bring people together: music and entertainment and discussion and dialogue. So we've got to keep doing this. I don't remember the beginning of your question, but that's the end of my answer.
No, that's actually fantastic. That was an absolutely perfect answer. So, and Stacey, this next one's kind of for you. There has been a lot of embracing of Pride. My favorite protest signs, my favorite signs that I see around the city, especially in June, said Pride was a riot, because it's easy to forget that Pride is actually something that started by people
yes.
that they just not go to jail for being themselves. So, but Pride was a riot, and it has morphed into this very loving, welcoming, opening experience that has kind of occasionally been hijacked. So do you think, Stacey, that Pride has become too corporate, or is this kind of signaling just kind of another iteration of our history and how we're going to be looking at these issues?
This is my response to that, which is if it's seen as something to benefit from, or to benefit off of, that becomes a problem. If it's seen as like a support, that's great. That's honestly like a personal question that I could see a corporation. I just saw a corporation the other day had like a rainbow ice cream. And I was like, I don't know how much of this was like, we stand the gays, let's support them, or if it was just like, let's make that bag, let's make a little bit of money.
Stacey, I gotta stop you. We didn't ask for rainbow ice cream, just like Black people didn't ask for Juneteenth ice
I
cream
know
at
that's what I was
Walmart.
thinking.
Thank
I was-
you. Take it away.
I agree. And I was thinking of the Juneteenth ice cream too, and I was like, Walmart really went in there with that. Anyways, the concept here though is that the world is changing, and at the end of the day, if we're getting to a better place to recognize and celebrate cultures and communities that have been traditionally oppressed or stepped on, then like we're moving in a good direction. We're moving in a good direction. Like maybe we can get into the weeds and be like, do we need to come for Target's, queer collection of clothing? And you know what, at the end of the day, as it comes for getting rights taken care of, that's low on my priority list, right? But like Nikki was saying this too, it's like communities have been traditionally told that they are not enough, that they're not equal. And so we celebrate that. We celebrate the communities to change some of the damage that's been done. Pride, we've gone from it's illegal to hold hands in public, to men or to women, to having a parade about it. And I think that is like great progress. Obviously, we're not done. We got more to do, but like, let's keep this energy up, right? Like, let's keep going. Like Walmart, if you want to do more rainbow ice cream and that's going to make a difference, let's go.
I feel like I should apologize. I lived in Bentonville for a while, and like it is as bad as you think. I'm so sorry. Well, so we have one more submitted question, and this is to all three of you, but it is, why is everyone on this panel so attractive?
What? I
Shout out to our parents. Shout out to our parents.
Good skincare.
Intersectionality of generations. The intersectionality is kind of where that comes from, I think.
Okay.
No, I'm just go ahead, Stacey. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say full disclosure. I wrote that question.
You did.
What were we gonna say, Matt?
I just had two thoughts. I mean, one of those thoughts is it's got to go all ways, and I think the expectation has to be all ways. In other words, we can't expect one community to feel included if we're not willing to include another community. And we've seen that happen, and it's hard. And just to share a story, this past December, one of our hubs was doing a toy drive, and they were doing a toy drive, and a Christian organization called Samaritan's Purse was collecting the toys and distributing the toys. And our Office of Equality said, we can't have this, we can't do this. And we said, why not? And they said, because on Samaritan's Purse's website, it says their core Christian beliefs. And one of those is that marriage is between a man and a woman. And so we cannot support an organization that does that. And I didn't know what to do about that. The reason we were using Samaritan's Purse for the toy drive is because they were better at distributing toys than we were. That was the only reason. But they weren't promoting themselves or anything. But it was our gay ordained deacon in the Presbyterian Church that leads our New York office that came out and said, I fully support this. Because there are people here at SalesForce that believe that marriage is only between a man and a woman. I need to be inclusive of them. And that's okay, because we're not talking about pushing a belief. We're talking about gathering toys. And so let's gather toys together. In other words, let's unite about stuff that we can do together. And let's make sure we're inclusive of each other's differences. Because as Stacey said before, you're not going to change people's beliefs. And nobody's here to change anybody's beliefs. But all we're here to do is to be inclusive of each other. So that was one thing. The other thing I was thinking about is I don't think Stacey is only this way at work. And I don't think Nikki is only this way at work. And I don't think this is something where you have to come to work and be inclusive. I think it's part of who you are. I mean, the reason that I celebrate Black Lives Matter is because I have two very close friends who are African Americans that I play basketball with every other morning. And I would put my life up in front of theirs any day of the week. And the reason that I support Utah Pride is because my neighbor across the street is a 63-year-old man who's gay, and he goes to grandparents' day at my school because my kids' grandparents are in Georgia. And he comes over every Christmas Eve and reads the Nativity with us. And we have him over for his birthday. He loves hamburgers, and so we make him the best hamburger on his birthday. And he is part of our family. I don't support Utah Pride Month because I want to be a good corporate citizen and be inclusive. I support him because of Bruce, and I don't support Black Lives Matter because it's the cool fad thing to do. I do it because of Tavares Green and because of Moses, the two guys I play ball with. And I think that's being authentic to yourself. Like, you can't just expect employees to come to work and change who they are. This needs to be part of who they are. And that's what we're trying to I think that's part of personal development at work, is not only learning how to do a good job, but learning how to be a good, inclusive human being. And I believe that the more you see the world, the better you see the world. So anytime I can expose employees to more of the world, I feel like I'm helping them develop personally, as well as helping them develop in their careers.
That's fantastic. I love that. Nikki, Stacey, do you guys have anything else you want to add before we wrap up?
No, this gave me life today. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Stacey. Thank you, Liz, for letting me be a part of this. This is amazing.
I'm trying to figure out why we all haven't had lunch yet, because everyone seems so chill.
I mean, clearly we've got some work to do, right? We'll just find a restaurant, we can make it happen. Easy peasy.
Yeah, I want to reiterate what Matt and Nikki said. It's just like it's no like secret that we're growing apart in this country. We're growing farther and farther away. And it is integral that we start doing something that isn't comfortable or easy. And that's like just listening to each other. That is literally, and not listening to have a response, but just listening to understand who Matt Evans is and why he feels the way he does, or why Nikki Walker is the way she is, and just like so powerful and amazing. You know what I mean? Like we need to listen. And that's easy to say when you're like, you want sauerkraut on your hot dog and I want ketchup. Let's listen. That's easy. It's hard when it feels like your rights are being violated or your very beliefs are being challenged. But that is when it is most important. And we see amazing examples like Matt. I love those examples you shared of like your relationship with Bruce has nothing to do with his sexuality. He's a human being who is made of these beautiful labels, and it's helped you see the importance of those. And the same with your buddies that you play basketball with. Listening goes so far, and it's so tough these days. But honestly, it's tough just because of like culture and tradition. It's not like you got to buy something. It's not like you got to go out of your way and da, 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 da. Just listen to people who are different. It goes a long way.
And we're still building. I think to Nikki's point about rights, and when you actually look at the calendar, humanity as a whole, we've still got a lot of work to do. We haven't been around all that long, and we've got a lot that we can do for each other and on ourselves, kind of just holistically. So, well, thank you so much, guys. We really appreciate your time. I told you it wouldn't be an hour and a half because I hate long meetings. Shout out to our sponsors, Domo.
I want to pause you for a second. Pause you for a second because we didn't thank Utah Tech leadership here. We didn't thank you guys for putting this on, for bringing us together, for having the ambition. You've always had the ambition to go out on a limb when others aren't. So thank you for being willing to host this and bring us together and share something so powerful with the community.
Well, we're always willing to do it. We really enjoy our community and what our community can bring to the rest of the state. We think it's a great opportunity here. So thank you so much. And thank you to Entrada and to Domo for sponsoring today, and to Matt and Stacey and Nikki for not only the things that you're able to do in these kinds of panels, but the things that you're doing throughout the rest of your life. So